I think a good start is of paramount importance because if this is a slow starting game, you're going to feel the anxiety creep into the crowd at Mile High.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Broncos and Bourbon. I'm your host, Phil Milani. Very excited about this week's episode as Zach By from 104.3 The Fan here in Denver joins me. And we get into all things about this huge matchup with the Broncos and Chiefs coming up on Sunday. Obviously, the playoffs are on the line for the Broncos. They're going to be wearing their throwback uniforms, facing a Chiefs team that won't be starting many of its regular starters, including Patrick Mahomes, but that shouldn't give anybody some overconfidence heading into this one because the Chiefs roster absolutely loaded. Carson Wentz probably should be a starter in the league. Andy Reid has said so much, earlier this year. So this is still a talented Chiefs squad that the Broncos will be facing. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Broncos here to win this. After losing the last two games, you're 9-5 with a 95% chance to make the playoffs. Now you find yourself in this situation where you need to win to get in, or you need both the Dolphins and the Bengals to lose. So you want to control your own destiny. The Broncos are in that position, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on this team to get this one done after being in that 9-5 position a couple of weeks ago. So we get into all that. We get into why it's important for the Broncos to actually make the playoffs this year. And then, of course, we talk a lot about Bo Nix and also Pat Surtain being the favorite to be Defensive Player of the Year this year. So a great episode here with Zach By coming up. And then the nightcap here is going to be Wild Turkey 101. So that's the nightcap here for the review after my conversation. So with that, let's get to my conversation with Zach By. Zach, thanks for taking some time here to join the program. How you been this year, man?
Been good, man. Been good. Got the radio show rocking and rolling with Philip Lindsay, who has really poured himself into the show, and we're into year 2 now, and we're getting great results in the ratings, and he's gotten so much better. And it's been a really fun Broncos season. This is my 8th year talking Denver Broncos on Denver Sports Station 104.3 The Fan, and this is the first winning season and the first a playoff season that we're all hoping they cross the finish line this weekend for.
You hopped on at the worst time in franchise history. Yeah.
Yes, and growing up a Bills fan, and you see some Bills stuff here in the background in addition to Broncos stuff. The Bills had the longest playoff drought in professional sports. I moved to Denver in 2017. The Bills go to the playoffs for the first time, and the Broncos, hadn't been back and now have the second longest playoff drought in the NFL. So I keep telling myself it's got nothing to do with me, but I can't quite prove it.
I was going to say, and if the Broncos win this week, it could create a sort of an interesting matchup for you then, huh, personally?
Yes. I equate it to it's like my mom being in a fight with my wife. I just don't like it.
No, that's not good for anybody.
That's not good. No.
Well, I appreciate you swapping out one Phil for another for the show today. So thanks for doing that.
Sure.
How you feeling about this one coming up on Sunday?
Look, I mean, the Broncos should absolutely win this football game. It goes without saying. I'll say it anyway, though. No Pat Mahomes, no Chris Jones, no Travis Kelce, no Trent McDuffie. I mean, it should be no problem. In Denver, I mean, you should have beat them in Kansas City. But I've said for years, once you think you have the NFL figured out, it will humble you in a major way. And we've seen these type of games before. Just a couple years ago, Indianapolis at home just has to beat Jacksonville to go to the NFL playoffs in the final week. Jacksonville has nothing to play for. Indianapolis has everything to play for, and they lose that game. You look at the end of Mike Shanahan's tenure here in Denver, and the late season collapse. Just reference Buffalo. 2004. They have a chance to snap their playoff drought. They're at home. They're hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, who already had the division wrapped up. It was the Steelers' backups, and they lost. So it happens. It does happen. There's a veteran quarterback quarterbacking the Kansas City Chiefs. That's Carson Wentz. I know people might be dismissive of Carson Wentz, but he has played in 97 NFL games. Okay, this is a guy who was at one point an MVP candidate, and the last time we saw him in a starting role, in a full-time starting role, was 2021, and he threw for 27 touchdowns with 7 interceptions, the exact touchdown to interception ratio he had during that MVP campaign with Philly before he got hurt. I mean, the exact ratio. And he's going through the football rehab, right? Sean McVay, a year ago, he was in this exact position week 18 in San Francisco a year ago, and he throws for 2 touchdowns, has a quarterback rating of a 99, and they beat the Niners in San Francisco. So the Broncos should win this game, but it is not a birthright that they do win this game. They have to show up and execute in a way that they haven't for a few weeks now.
That the final week of the season is always a little wacky. Like, weird things happen. And, Broncos fans should remember Carson Wentz from that Philly game a few years ago where they ran out of fireworks in the stadium. So definitely well aware of what Carson Wentz is capable of doing. In a weird way, it puts an interesting twist on this game, it feels like, Zach, because, the last 2 weeks, the Broncos have been playing with a lot of pressure to clinch that playoff spot. Obviously, now that it ramps up even more with just the final game here, you got to win this one. It feels like, and then now you add in the backups from Kansas City. It's like all piled up on the Broncos here that, like, there's a lot of pressure on them to win this one.
There is, and they can't get tight. Just because you're the better team and have better players doesn't mean you necessarily win the game. I'll use a college example. How did a team like Ohio State lose to a team like Michigan after their firepower is on display? Well, they got tight, and then things start to snowball, and these games, they turn into a life of their own. So you can't. I think a good start is of paramount importance, because if this is a slow starting game, you're going to feel the anxiety creep into the crowd at Mile High, just like you could see it creep into the players, maybe dropping balls, just not feeling the intensity of the moment, and start to tighten up. And guess what? The guys from Kansas City, they're just playing free. They're just playing free. So there is a lot of pressure on the Broncos, and you could make an argument, and we're going to have this conversation on the radio today with former Bronco running back Philip Lindsay, in that, is there actually more pressure with these guys not playing? Because here's the thing, and Sean Payton talked about this earlier in the week. Phil, this isn't college. You can't rest 40 guys because your roster has 100 on it, right? Your game day roster is in the upper 40s. So yeah, they'll rest, maybe 5-6 guys, but the other 40 that are going to be on the field, a lot of them have Super Bowl rings at home. They are championship caliber players. So this idea that it's going to be the Broncos versus the Little Sisters of the Poor, that's not the case. That's not what it's going to be. And you can make the argument that there's actually more added pressure with the winning you're in scenario against backups. Because Phil, if they somehow, and I don't want to put it in the air, but if they lose this game, we'll be having conversations on Monday. Hey, this is the biggest collapse since what? Is it a bigger collapse than the Denver Nuggets blowing a 20-point lead in Game 7 on their home floor? Like, we'll be having conversations like that. So, yeah, tons of pressure on this football team on Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't want to be negative either. I don't want to put that out on the air. But, like, hearing from Broncos fans, just on social media and all that, like, a lot of them have been saying, like, oh, well, it's still going to be a great season and there's still this great turnaround, yada, 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 yada. But, like, to me, that's sort of like a loser's mentality. Like, you don't want to take any sort of moral victories here, because when the Broncos are 9-5, looking at, just a few games left in the season, that team should make the playoffs. So, like, I don't want to hear this sort of, it was still a good season, still had the turnaround. No, this team should make the playoffs, and I agree with you that it would just be a huge collapse if they can't get this thing done. That kind of gets to my next point here, Zach, is like, how big of a deal is it for this Broncos team to check that box and say, hey, not only did we have a winning season, but we also made the playoffs?
I think it's a huge deal. I mean, you just kind of referenced it. When this team's 9-5, they had a playoff probability of 94%. So please do not rationalize to yourself why a collapse is okay. When you have a playoff probability of 94%, you need to cross the finish line. And again, like this is this. Look, it's not going to happen. I think the Broncos are going to win this game. They would need some other things to happen in addition to a loss to knock them out. They still, believe it or not, even after losing against the Chargers, losing against Cincinnati, they still, according to the New York Times in conjunction with The Athletic and their playoff probability calculator, still have a 72% chance to make the playoffs. Just go execute. You are at home. You've been losing games. The defense has taken a step back. The offense at times has been very disjointed. The running game has often been inexplicable. Just get back to basics, recenter yourself, refocus yourself. And I've been saying clinch and cleanse. Clinch the playoffs with a win and cleanse the palate from these last few weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they should get this thing done. But, for people who are thinking like, hey, what difference does it make? Like, they're just going to go play the Bills and get crushed, in the playoffs. That you can't think like that to me, because it's all about the narrative, and it's about building a culture, and it's about turning the page here. Winning season was big. Making the playoffs to me is big. And then next year, you're not talking about, hey, you haven't made the playoffs since Super Bowl 50, blah, 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 blah. You could say, hey, we made the playoffs last year. To me, that feels like a big deal, Zach.
Totally. And it sends you into the offseason with incredible momentum. And it feels like a new day in Denver, a dawn of something new, and you can look at a couple different categories. Like, we're still in the infancy of the Sean Payton experience. Bo is still a baby by NFL terms. The Broncos ownership is still, big picture, brand new pretty much compared to all these other organizations. Launching, making the playoffs, winning this final game, beating Kansas City, which is always just added, flavor anyway, because it's the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't care who's playing. Beat them, go to the playoffs, have a competitive performance, regardless of the final outcome in Buffalo, and it really springboards your offseason, where next year we're talking about, hey, could the Broncos potentially challenge the Chiefs for the division? Could the Broncos have a killer draft and be, instead of a 10-win team, an 11-12-win team? Those are the conversations we'll be having. But if they lose this game and for some reason catch the wrong red lights, all right, and they lose and miss the playoffs, those conversations, you'll have to have like real perspective to gather yourself and get out of this moment. Because if we live through that sequence, it's going to be an awful tone setter for that offseason you're referencing.
Yeah, it's all about building blocks to me. And like you mentioned, hey, go into the offseason, start filling out the rest of this roster. That's one thing about the Chiefs, is that the whole roster is just so full and ready to go. That's a part of building here. And, you think you keep stacking this thing for the Broncos, and it could be turn out good. With Bo, what have you seen from him? Because it seemed like maybe this year they peaked around that Atlanta game. How have you seen him through the course of the season go through some of the ups and downs? And then, of course, last week, there were like some spurts where it looked really good, and then some spurts where it didn't look so good. And it's just kind of like this high and low the last couple of weeks with him.
Yeah, and as I'm sitting here listening to you, Phil, it sounds like you're describing a rookie season in the NFL, right? Some highs, some lows. Luckily for Broncos country, some truly euphoric moments. You think about some of those passes to Marvin Mims, even going back to the Browns game, then the Cincinnati game, what he's been able to do with Sutton. Bo on the whole has been excellent. All right, he has really surpassed any reasonable expectation that people set out for him, and really, and some other expectations have smashed it completely out of the park. I mean, the guy with 3 weeks left in the season was in the Rookie of the Year conversation, second most likely after only Jaden Daniels. No one really saw that coming in August. Was it perfect? No. It started really slow. They lose those first 2 games of the season. Bo has 4 picks in the first 2 games. And then in the middle portion of the season is when he really started to figure it out. He was much more accurate with the football, much more calm. His footwork got better. His accuracy went up. And maybe most importantly of all, his turnovers went down. I mean, he had weeks where it was turnover-free football. He's Rookie of the Week, AFC just Player of the Week with no rookie tag, Rookie of the Month. I think it was back in October. And then near the end of the year, it started to get just a little bit disjointed again, not taking care of the football quite as much as he was during that middle portion of the Broncos season. But all in all, the Cincinnati game is kind of a microcosm of his season as a whole, where the first half it's, again, sort of sloppy, escaping the pocket from pressure that wasn't really there, inaccurate with the football. And then you see him in the second half making some plays that are breaking the internet. I mean, so it was it's been a fun year. I'm just glad that the Broncos have picked a lane here, with a young player, a young quarterback. For years, it felt like, the Band-Aid approach had some false positives, as Vic Fangio would put it, with a player like Drew Lock or even Teddy Bridgewater at times. But picking a player in the first round, seeing some of the flashes that you would hope to see when you picked them on draft night is just best case scenario for the Broncos. And we came into the year, I'd be arguing back with my co-host on the radio saying the most important thing this year is to develop Bo Nix. And he would say, no, this is pro football. The most important thing is try to win as many games as possible. Well, we got to have our cake and eat it too, where we got to see the development of Bo Nix in a potential playoff push rookie season. Very uncommon, but a special year here in Denver for Bo Nix, and hopefully the start of maybe a decade run here with the partnership with Sean Payton.
It does feel like Bo has really taken over the town. I mean, I'm curious. You're on the air so long every single day. What's your take on that? Like, how has he been able to? Like, it feels like different than any of these other quarterbacks that you mentioned that have come through the door here with the Broncos. Like, he's really won over people in this city, and it feels like any kind of criticism of Bo or anything that, is very legitimate about his play, people don't want to hear it. They're just really excited about him, and they're really just amped up for what the future could be with Bo.
Yeah, and it feels like Broncos country has been wandering through the quarterback desert, and they finally got a drink of water. And when someone gives you that drink, you don't ask, "Hey, is this Dasani?" Right? It's such a relief from the past 8-9 years, and on top of the first round nature, all right, on top of the positive play on the field where he's got 25 touchdowns. Here going into the final week of the season, he's also likable, and he was also a known player in college. Like, we got to know Bo Nix through the years in college. This is a kid, people talk about the bad Auburn experience. He walked in, he was SEC Freshman of the Year. It was one bad year when his offensive coordinator left to go to Oregon, and then Bo rejoins him the following year, and he's one of the best players in the country. So I think there was a familiarity. He's a bit of an underdog story, judging by a lot of the commentary on draft night, where people like Todd McShay said half of the league had a second-round grade on him. I went on ESPN radio doing a hit nationally, and I had one of the hosts, who I won't mention, openly laughing that we found hope in Bo Nix and it wasn't going to work and da-da-da-da. So I think that it kind of felt like it organically developed into a Denver against the consensus, against what Bo Nix was supposed to be. So I think Broncos country was almost like defiant in a lot of ways. Like, this is our guy. And he's got a humility about him that I think people enjoy, kind of the anti-Russell Wilson, if you will, in that category. And just the way he carries himself. the phraseology that I have used here this past year is he has CEO energy. And I just think that you put all of that together in a bundle, it's made Broncos country rally around this young player.
A really good point there about him like being one of us and like defending him. That's a really good point there, Zach, because it does feel like that. And it's exciting to think about what's possible for him. Really interested to see what kind of jump he can make this offseason and what that sophomore season looks like. Because to me, like that's such a huge leap that okay, there's a full year of tape of you out there. Defenses are already adjusting to what he's able to do. They're going to have more time to do that in this offseason. How does Bo counter that? That's going to be like just so interesting to watch next year and see how he continues to adapt his game to the NFL. And it's exciting when you got that kind of guy.
It is, and plus that his work ethic is not in question. This is a young man who has poured his life into the game of football. This is not your average rookie who's running around town enjoying being a celebrity. He's already bought a home. He has a wife. He's been married since college. You go back to the story. Sean says, empty your bag. There's nothing but football stuff in there, along with maybe a Bible. So, this guy is going to pour himself into the process, and that's what's exciting. Because if it looks like this as a rookie, what does that sophomore year look like when he's dedicated his life to the game?
Zach, I got one more for you before we move on here about this Broncos team. I'm interested. You think that PS2 is the favorite here to win Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. The odds have flipped. He's the favorite in the clubhouse right now on pretty much every sports wagering outlet. The Broncos have had one Defensive Player of the Year in their entire organization's history, and that was back in 1978 when Randy Gradishar went in. But not even, the great Von Miller or Elvis Dumerville or whoever you would want to point to. Great, great players through the years have never had another additional Defensive Player of the Year other than Randy back in 46 years ago. So it's special. If a cornerback could ever win it, this is the year. He's the definition of a lockdown corner. I think he's the most lockdown corner since probably Darrelle Revis that I have seen. Maybe Stephon Gilmore in there in 2019 when he won Defensive Player of the Year at the cornerback spot. But outside of Gilmore in 2019, you got to go back to 2009, Charles Woodson. Cornerbacks just don't win this award traditionally. But if a corner was ever going to win one, it's PS2.
Yeah, he's had just an outstanding year, and I think that he's gone from like that conversation of he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. No, now he's definitely the best cornerback in the league. And, I think he'd be the seventh cornerback to win the award. So, yeah, that just sort of speaks to what you were talking about there. It's still crazy to me that Champ did not win in 2006, gave it to Jason Taylor that year. And I think Taylor only had like 14 and a half sacks. So, that's a different point there, but I think that PS2's got this thing wrapped up, especially too because Zach, it feels like no one else this year, like no edge rusher or anybody has like gone crazy. Like Micah Parsons has kind of had a down year, the Bosa brothers kind of a down year, so like it's just it's all lining up. It feels like for Pat.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm happy for him. He's another guy kind of like Bo, where he's just likable. He carries himself with a layer of humility, and he's got the pedigree. He's got the blue chip background. He's got the dad. I mean, he just glides around that field. So fun to watch.
Yeah. A couple of coaches' sons there, Bo and Pat. So,
yeah.
Okay, we call this segment here Phil's Five, Zach. A couple of rapid fire ones here for you, and they're all about you. So, who is your favorite player growing up?
Favorite football player growing up?
Any kind of player.
It would be Kobe Bryant. I grew up, me falling in love with the game of basketball, which I played for probably every day for 15 years. It synced up when Kobe was coming into the league and partnering with Shaq. And I fell in love with him. And then as I got older, understanding his work ethic and killer mentality, he was my favorite. But on the football side, it would probably be someone like Jim Kelly, Doug Flutie, those old school Buffalo Bills players that I grew up kind of worshiping.
Oh yeah, some great Buffalo teams through the early '90s, late '80s. There, that's sort of what I think about when I think of like old school football, like those Broncos, Bills. The that quarterback class of '83 is awesome. So,
Yep.
okay, who's your favorite player now?
Ooh, my favorite player now would be Nikola Jokic on the basketball side. I never have seen someone unlock the game of basketball itself quite like Jokic. He is a puppet master. He's remarkable. He is just I mean, I think he's among the greatest players to ever play. On the football side, man, I have really loved Christian McCaffrey. Watching him, a healthy Christian McCaffrey is hilariously fun. But I'll say at the end of the day, man, and I just love so many of these guys. But if I had to pick one, it would be Josh Allen, an absolute freak. I think he's the most talented talent, not accomplishment, but the most talented quarterback in the history of football. Someone like Troy Aikman said he's got the largest arm in the history of football. We have never seen a quarterback that literally jumps over linebackers on a regular basis, but also can run through them at the same time. We have never had a quarterback for more than 2 years of 40 touchdowns. Josh is going to do it for a fourth consecutive year this year and hopefully winning his first MVP.
That MVP battle this year with Lamar and Burrow is going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out. Okay, who's your favorite? Who was your favorite media member growing up? Did you have a guy that you sort of like, hey, this is why I want to get into this field?
That is a great question. The media members that I like looked up to, no one would know them that would likely listen to this podcast because they're
Okay.
all from my hometown, and I worship the local guys.
Yep.
The guys who for people around here might be like Mike Kliss or Troy Rank or fill in the blank, right? But I think nationally, Colin
Mm.
Coward inspired me so much, and Mike Greenberg hosting Mike and Mike for 19 years or whatever it was, and those teases going into break, and me doing a tour of Bristol, ESPN as a young professional, and hearing that Mike Greenberg early there every day writing out every single tease going into commercial break, and me thinking to myself, man, if he can do that, then what's my excuse not to do that? So
Mm.
those are a couple that inspired me.
Okay, two legends there. That's awesome. Okay, couple more for you here. Most memorable interview that you've done.
Most memorable interview that I've done, it would be Von Miller hanging up on me and Brandon Stokely live on the radio after asking him if he would restructure his contract to be a Bronco for life.
I remember that. That sort of made its rounds for sure. Yeah, that was a good one. Oh man, I had to
Classic.
ask it though. Had to ask it.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then what's a sporting event that you haven't been to either just as a fan or to cover it that you really that's on your bucket list?
You know what? I've never been to the Super Bowl. I've never been to the Super Bowl after all these years. Have never been. That's something that I'll probably be checking off the bucket list pretty soon.
Yeah, Radio Row, and then hang
Yep,
out there for. Is that something in
yep,
your future? Okay, cool.
yeah, 100%.
Unlike anything else. So love the Super Bowl. Yeah, had the fortune of going to a couple there with the team. So it's
Yep.
awesome. Last thing for you here, some career advice for you from you, Zach. Just to a young guy who's maybe looks up to you like you did to Mike. What's some career advice that you would give them that they're just starting out now?
Um, Nothing will replace the work. Nothing will replace the work. Don't ever think that you're just so talented that you can just show up and pull it off. You have to put the work in. You have to put the prep in. And like I said, if someone like, Mike Greenberg, who's on top of the world, can have his ducks in a row, 6 days a week and be so professional, what would be your excuse who's never done anything in the business yet? And so nothing will replace the work. And also just start doing it. We
Mhm.
live in a day and age, when I was coming up, Phil, you had to work behind the scenes and earn your right to crack a microphone. Nowadays, you can just start a podcast. You can start your own website. You can start your own YouTube channel. So when I talk to young people, I say, guys, stop waiting around for someone to give you an opportunity. Start doing it. And as you continue to do it, nothing will replace those reps, and you're going to get better. So, take your future in your own hands. Don't wait for anybody else.
Awesome advice, Zach. Thank you so much, man. And thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate your insights on the team and looking forward to the game on Sunday. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me on, Phil. Appreciate you.
My thanks to Zach By from 104.3 The Fan for coming on here. Zach has had a lot of success here with Philip Lindsay recently. Kind of a rough start for that duo, but now they've really been crushing it. And, it's awesome to see a guy like Philip Lindsay who like I've had my eye on for a long time since he was a Buff. I mean, he's a local kid here in Denver and then obviously a Buff and then played for the Broncos and was certainly a fan favorite. Now it's cool to see him have so much success in the media and also does some stuff with 9 News on game days. So cool to see Phil come along there and, it was awesome getting that insight from Zach By. In a media market, the voice of the drive time show on radio really, that carries a lot of weight. And Zach has really taken on that role very well and really enjoyed his insight there. And he went from having one of the best shows, in my opinion, with Brandon Stokely and their chemistry, and then he moved to that big slot there with the drive time. And, you're always like, hey, can you recapture that magic that he had with Brandon? And seems like they've done that, him and Phil. So swapped out one Phil for a different Phil. And I think that was a good conversation. So I enjoyed chatting with him. We kind of got into a lot of my thoughts on the game, but I just think that the start of this game, like Zach was mentioning, is going to be so crucial for this team because you don't want to be in a close game late in the fourth there. You're going to start feeling really tight. And that's one thing I think we've seen from the Broncos a little bit is that, earlier in the year, you could play free and you can say, hey, we lost to the Ravens. We're going to come back next week and we're going to go play the Chiefs on the road. And they came back and played well. They were sort of playing free. They're playing with house money, no expectations. Now, since we've seen the Broncos in a position to really clinch a playoff spot, they haven't been quite as sharp. And so, there's something to be said for playing with that pressure and playing with expectations. And, it's harder to win in this league when you're not playing as free, not playing with house money. So you want to start out hot. You don't want to be in a close game, and you don't want to take this Chiefs team for granted because Carson Wentz, I mean, we got into it there with Zach. We know what he's capable of. Andy Reid is still going to be calling the plays, and this Chiefs team is really filled out. There's not like big holes there, and so no matter who they line up, it's going to be a tough test. I mean, they're still the back-to-back Super Bowl champs. They've lost one game this year, so it's going to be tough. So I don't mean to be so negative. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about the mentality here going into this one, and there is a lot on the line. And making the playoffs is a big, big deal, if you ask me, because you got to change the narrative around this team, and they've done such a great job of that this year. Really feeling like there's a fresh start. Bo Nix, fresh start, Sean Payton has really changed the mindset of this team. To continue that narrative into this offseason, you can't lose 3 games to finish out the year and miss the playoffs. That is going to dampen all of the success that has happened this year. So I really think that we're going to learn more about where this Broncos team is, about how they play on Sunday. Do they come out and just crush the Chiefs and say, look, what happened against the Chargers and Bengals, that's not what we're about. We are a playoff team, and, hey, the Bills should be nervous about us coming in. Or are they going to be tight, and are they going to play slow, and they're going to play down to the Chiefs maybe, and then it's going to be a really a heart-pounding game in the fourth quarter. What are we going to see from this Broncos team? Have they really turned the page? We've heard Sean Payton talk about how he likes the grit with this team. We got to see it coming up on Sunday. And, I expect them to start hot, to be confident, and we'll see what kind of shot they give the Chiefs right off the bat. So I'm excited to see how this Broncos team comes out and plays. And, I just think that it's a big deal in order to stack positive moments and head into the offseason being like, okay, we made the playoffs. We had a winning season. We've got our quarterback. Let's add some pieces in the draft. Let's do some stuff in free agency. Let's really the salary cap wise. Let's take another step forward here in the process of the whole Russell Wilson contract. Just build on that positivity. It really starts this Sunday, and we'll have to see how the Broncos come out. So excited to see how they come out. It's exciting to talk about a huge game like this in the final week of the season. Hasn't happened in a very long time, and I'm hoping that the Broncos deliver. So that's what I'll say about it. And it's going to take a big effort to win, and I think that they're capable of it, and we'll see how they do. So let's get to our nightcap here. This is Wild Turkey 101. 101 means it's 101 proof. So you could tell I've gotten into this bottle a little bit. Bought this before the holidays and got into it a little bit. So you see here on the bottom, Master Distiller Jimmy Russell. He has like 60 years of experience with Wild Turkey here. I think he's the most experienced master distiller in the world. So a lot of experience making Wild Turkey here. Let's get into the mash bill. 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% barley, and you could really taste the corn in this. And, it's got this sort of an ambery color, 101 proof, which is very high. I think that it goes into the barrel at like 109, I think. Or it comes out of the barrel at 109, and then they just bring it down to 101. So not a lot going on there on the back end. So, and it says even here, for more than 60 years, legendary master distiller Jimmy Russell has been crafting Wild Turkey 101. So this is a consistent bottle. It's a staple in the bourbon business. So I can go ahead and give this one a taste here in the Broncos glass. I'm going to pour a ton here, just a little. It is 101 proof after all. And let's get the nose here. It smells like bourbon, of course, vanilla, spice, sort of what you would expect on the nose. And, you can get this bottle for like $25. So it's readily available. It's very entry level type of bourbon here. And, it's everywhere. Like Wild Turkey is just sort of like a bourbon you can find everywhere. It's really in line with the bourbons that we've reviewed this year. So you really get that corn. I mean, it hits you right away. Corn, spice, but you could really taste the corn. 75% corn, and you can smell the spice, and then you get some of that, and then it's not overly complex, but it's just enough to like make you enjoy it. And the finish is good too. Like I think that like if you just tasted this and you didn't know what the proof was, it wouldn't hit you right away that it was 101. So like I think that kind of goes to how they put this together, and that it's not like blast you in the face, but you definitely get a little bit of that burn on the finish. And you also get like I might be the only one because I did not see this in any of the research I was doing, but almost like a syrupy, like a maple syrup taste toward the end of it. So that's what I would say on the finish there. So this is a consistent bottle. This is a staple bottle. This is something that if you're collecting bourbon and you want like to build like a bourbon bar cart, you'd probably have a Wild Turkey on there. This is sort of like their bottle, the 101. This is the one that you'd get. And, I think it's sort of a versatile bourbon. Like you could drink it neat like this. Certainly if you just want a little sip taster type of thing. Also, I think it would go pretty well. I've made a couple of old fashions over the holidays, and this was a good one for this. Obviously, the 101 proof holds up through the cocktail. So I think I think that if you're really into bourbon, you'd use this for cocktails. If you're just starting out, no harm in putting this on the rocks and watching a Broncos game. So that is going to do it for us. This is a big episode here ahead of this big game for the Broncos, and thanks for checking it out. If you like this and you like the program, please like and subscribe as we move forward here. Hopefully we're talking about a playoff matchup against the Buffalo Bills next week. If not, the show will continue on. Might not be every week, but every once in a while, certainly in the next couple of weeks as we wrap up the season, no matter what happens here, we'll be putting out some episodes. So please like and subscribe and be on the lookout for those as we build this community. The show will continue on throughout the off season, and I've been having a lot of fun just being able to interact with fans and read the YouTube comments, and I really enjoy it. So thank you so much for everybody who's built this community, and it really feels like we got some momentum here, and it's been a blast getting to interact with so many of you. So thank you so much. If you have a recommendation for something you'd like me to review, please go ahead and leave that in the comments section, and we'll get to that. And I think in the off season we can have some fun. We could do some live episodes. Maybe we can do some more engaging type of stuff, with people who are checking us out. So we'll see what the new year brings. I hope all of you have a happy New Year. I'm not sure how many days after New Year's are you allowed to say that. That's like a Larry David thing, right? Hey, you can. I think it's the 3rd. This is the last day you could say Happy New Year. So Happy New Year, and I hope that 2025 is great for all of us. So with that, I'll sign off. Thanks again to Zach By for hopping on the program. Hopefully you all enjoyed the conversation. For Broncos and Bourbon, I'm Phil Milani.